Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching GEEKCASTER. This is Michael, and today we have in the studio Max from Retro Kingdom.
Heyo.
How you doing?
I'm great. It's great to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back in the studio. Now I have some issues with my Atari, and you're gonna bring this bad boy back to life.
Yeah, it's well on its way. I definitely don't confess to being a master of repairs, but
Okay.
it's kind of funny. I was having a discussion about this today, and people get very overwhelmed about repairing electronics, but it's kind of like a mix of just being good at cleaning and a mix of playing spot the differences.
Okay.
So between a lot of reference photos and just kind of troubleshooting and making sure nothing's covered in dust or corrosion, you can usually fix most systems, at least when we're talking about classic games.
Okay. Now, what are you doing right now?
Well, you handed over your Atari to me and you had not too many problems to report. The system was working, but there was a piece that broke off. So there was one of the knobs which had to be reattached. And I luckily had a lot of extra Atari, so I was able to actually salvage a genuine lever to replace it with a real piece, which is nice. And you told me that some of your games weren't playing, and some were, which suggested that the games are the issue in some instances, not the system itself. So a lot of the times when games are giving you trouble, it's just because of corrosion. And if we're talking about Atari, for example, we're talking about games like, I've got one in my hand now, it's from 1981. So it's very likely that there's a good bit of dust in this and corrosion.
Okay.
And there's usually just a large chip inside the game that just needs to be cleaned off with some simple rubbing alcohol from your medicine cabinet and a Q-tip. And other things to note, we're talking a little bit, trying to figure out maybe there's a way that this could, I kind of love the really, really old school graphics, but there are ways to upscale this a little bit to maybe make it look a little bit nicer. So the connectors to the monitor you have back here, we might be able to use something that's a little bit cleaner. Yeah, it's definitely, I enjoy this as a hobby project. I was more than happy to help when you offered the opportunity to tinker with the system. I'm also not an expert on Atari, but I have my own and I've played around with it, so I was definitely happy to take a crack at it. The thing's working, it's playing. I think what we're really just going to do is clean off all your games and maybe do a little bit of homework on Amazon or something to see what other ways we might connect this to the TV with a little bit more of a stable connection. And otherwise, we're good to go.
Now, at Retro Kingdom, what systems do people bring in that you say, hey, I can make this live again?
Good question. Basically anything pre-disc era. If we're talking about Nintendo 64 and back, you're usually talking about pretty hardy stuff. Even things like a GameCube are pretty hard to break, the console itself. I could definitely do some work to help like a PS2 or a GameCube or something, or an Xbox One, something of that era, but there's a lot more finicky stuff starting to get into that generation of games. So once you go prior to disc era, like, the challenge with disc-based games is they only get worse. They never get in better condition than when they're factory mint. Whereas these sort of cart games, you're basically just cleaning off corrosion and they'll work pretty much indefinitely as long as they're clean and not dusty and they're not broken. So you can do a lot with these. If we're talking about disc games that are working poorly, it's usually because they're scratched. And you can use a resurfacing machine to resurface them, but you're really just like shimming off a layer of the disc. So you're kind of skating on thin ice there. So it's a little bit harder. And there's also, as systems got more complicated, like you have like Xboxes getting Red Ring of Death. You have not a fun era. You have PS2s that the lenses aren't working. When you have systems that have lasers that are reading things, that can be pretty complicated. Some old school systems actually had lasers that read systems and belts that move things. Those are a little bit hard. But yeah, like I could fix at Retro Kingdom, N64, a Super Nintendo, regular Nintendo, most handhelds prior to like the PlayStation Vita or the PSP era. Like if we're talking about most any Game Boy and Nintendo-based handhelds prior to like the DS line. So like all of the chunky cartridge-based games, the DS, the SP, the GBA Color, Game Boy
Is it
Pocket.
hard to find these pieces? Like when you need to fix something?
No, I mean, if you're talking about genuine pieces, like I replaced this piece, I dragged my feet on getting this thing repaired. I don't remember if you had the original one and you handed it to me and it just snapped off, but I had more of them available, so I just replaced it myself with one in my stock. Those are, in a sense, limited. There's only so many of those floating around. That's not to say that there aren't lots of them. Like, you're not really hard-pressed to find another Game Boy out there. But there are a lot of people that will help with making reproduction pieces, which is kind of nifty. Like if you lose like the battery cover to your Game Boy, sometimes like it's not worth it to I gotta pay for an official. People have different tastes on how authentic they want their stuff. I think if it's at the point that it's not hurting anyone, like in terms of reproductions, like I don't want to spend a lot of money to get an official like plastic back to or a button like this thing, for example. Like we have this paddle controller and one of them's missing this little lever here. Like, would it really hurt anyone if we got a 3D printed of this versus finding an original one and salvaging and snapping on? It's not something that at least I would personally say is that much of an issue. And then you can go to like Etsy or something and get that, or Alibaba, or a lot of online retailers specialize in 3D printed like common parts. Yeah, there's a real thriving community on this stuff. Most pieces you're not going to have trouble on. And a lot of people, if they're actually into this stuff to know enough about it, they're like happy to help. It's a pretty good community. There's a lot to learn. And honestly, the threshold for error on older systems is pretty low. Like if I'm just going in here, like even without much mastery over the Atari, I basically just opened it up. I took off the regular Phillips screws. It wasn't even before there were proprietary screws on systems. I looked at it. It said it was from 1981. It looked like it probably hadn't been opened since 1981. I removed the dust with your simple like compressed air can that you might have for cleaning out your computer keyboard. I used rubbing alcohol. I just did a pretty standard job just to make sure all the connections are looking good. And now I'm just kind of doing the same thing for the games. And from that point on, you're basically just dressing surface issues. It was dirty on the grill, so I cleaned that out with similar rubbing alcohol. I cleaned the connections on the controllers with more rubbing alcohol. Sometimes some grit or grime can get in these little pinholes, so you can clean those out right easy. And just looking over at the thing, the one piece that was missing was an easy fix. It's kind of fun to take some ownership over older systems. If you have the capacity and the head to do the stuff, it can be kind of gratifying. Like we had a little adventure to get this thing running, and that was kind of exciting in its own right to finally get it to work.
What have you ever come across a system that it was very difficult but most rewarding to fix? Anything retro?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, there have been some.
Anything that stands out?
Really stands out. I'm currently working on one. It's one in my personal collection. It's a PC Engine. Did you ever have a TurboGrafx?
No, I've heard of it.
It's funky.
I know people that have had it, but I've never played on it.
They're pretty gnarly. It was the TurboGrafx operated on Who cards, which are a really weird format of cartridge. They basically look like a credit card. And the shtick there was they had a bunch of versions of the system, both nationally and internationally. And the later versions evolved into this weird, almost briefcase-looking system that was the first video game console to be able to play CDs. But there's a lot of stuff going on there in terms of strange power adapters and making sure that you have the right... It was pretty wild. It it was so ahead of its time. It was the first system that it could play CD-based games, and it could also play just regular old music CDs. But it was just barely able to clear that threshold, and it was two systems in one. One that was the Who card, this little like credit card type game you had to put in, and one was the CD game. And to make the system strong enough to play a CD-based game, you had to put a RAM booster into the one side. So you have to have like a bunch of things clicking in the right place, and you have to have it on a number of different channels, and it's like there was a lot of things to have to do, and it was more troubleshooting to get everything in the right mode.
Right.
And then eventually I got it, and that was pretty gratifying. That was a really fun system.
How long was TurboGrafx out for?
TurboGrafx was around for a while. It depends if we're talking nationally or internationally. I'm no TurboGrafx expert, but I mean, I got one by accident from a friend's house. The handheld TurboGrafx, which is really cool. It's like kind of imagine the thickness of a Game Gear and also the battery consumption. But imagine it like in the shape of a Game Boy, so like horizontal or vertical instead of horizontal. Mid 90s, like 95, 90 to 98 maybe.
Oh, wow. So only a 3-year run?
I'd have to check. It had, I think it probably pushed to the late 90s, but I don't think it went into the 2000s with the TurboGrafx. It was pretty modern for its time, but it didn't have an endless run. Had a decent chunk of games on it, and again, I'm gonna have to do my homework after this. But yeah, a lot of the games that I'm thinking of are like mostly mid-90s titles.
For some reason, I really want to get my hand on ColecoVision.
Oh, ColecoVision's great.
Yeah.
That's a classic. That's like a contender with Atari and the Intellivision.
Yeah, but it's hard to find ColecoVision.
Yeah.
And you know I want to get my Donkey Kong. I mean, that's like the end of the day.
Oh, man. I love the classic that still stand the test of time. Everyone's got kind of like their golden generation of games. And it's interesting to see like how people feel, because I think there's a great debate of what games still slap right now. And then it's kind of like a mix of like, that's also calibrated by like what you grew up with and what you have nostalgia for and what sort of games like really had unique stuff going on. Like Donkey Kong really doesn't have that many knockoffs. So even just classic Donkey Kong is still a pretty great experience all told, I'd say.
Right.
I wonder why that one's hard to come by. It could just be a fan favorite. I'd have to look into that. Yeah, I don't traditionally vend this era of systems, but I've had them from time to time. And they're pretty fun to see like some of the roots of where this hobby have grown from.
Yeah, and just for nostalgia reasons, I would love to get a Pong, like the original.
The cocktail table?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are great. Do you have any opinions on like a big thing now in the arcade world is like having MAME cabinets, having like a reproduction of like a Pong cocktail cabinet or a Donkey Kong cocktail cabinet? Do you have any personal opinions on that?
You know what? I think if you entertain a lot, I think that's great. You know, where people can come and pay. I've seen people do different variations of Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man. That's a classic that people tend to. Centipede. What's another one that I've seen a lot of people do?
Asteroids.
Asteroids, yes. A lot of people do asteroids. And it's great. Great, nice little coffee table. I saw a design where you could use it as a regular table as well as play games.
Interesting.
Because one of the problems with the original cabinets that were made, you can't do anything. It just takes up space.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just another piece of furniture.
Yeah.
So somebody got smart and said, hey, use this as your dinner table or your coffee table, and you can play games. So I thought that was great. I would do that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, if you have extra space, you have your own little arcade in your house, which people do. But I wouldn't do it just to do it. You'd have to be like, you know what? I'm going to entertain a lot. I'm going to do stuff. Otherwise, that's...
It's a big investment, and it's a
Yeah.
big piece of real estate in your home.
Yeah.
Have you ever played on a Neo Geo cabinet?
No, I haven't.
Maybe you've seen them in an arcade. The affectionate nickname for them is usually Big Red. It's like that multi-arcade where you can like press a button in the center and you cycle between like 2, 4, 6 games.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that.
I have one of those at my house. That's a real hoot. I think as much as I definitely have my arcade favorites, like
Right.
in my thinking a little bit further down the line, I was like, oh wow, I could spend like a couple $100 and get my favorite arcade game off Craigslist or something. But like, eventually I'm gonna want to play a different game. So the Neo Geo cabs are a cool way to get a mix of things. Granted, the cartridges are pretty expensive, and I don't know if you've ever opened one up.
No.
It's the biggest cartridge you ever see in your life. It's like a TV dinner box.
Wow.
Like massive, way bigger than a VHS. They're
Now, how many games can you put into that?
It depends. They have different, they call it a JAMA board.
Okay.
It's kind of like this, so you have your Atari, and your Atari has a slot for a game. So imagine, like, the one in my house has 4 of these slots. So, and you
wow.
cycle between them, and it just chooses, next slot, next slot, next slot, next slot. They
That's
go
cool.
up to 6. Yeah, they're fun. And you could have a multi-card in there, so maybe you could even select further. Do you have a favorite arcade game?
A favorite? I would
Tough question.
you know one of them that you're working on fixing. What is it? Megamania.
Megamania.
Megamania. I
I'll hit that one next.
love that game.
I've never played it.
Yeah, it's like not Centipede, not it's like Invaders, Space Invaders, but to the next level. Yeah,
Nice.
but to the next level. Everybody loves Pac-Man.
Everyone loves
but
Pac-Man.
you know, that's definitely my thing. But I'm fiending to play Donkey Kong.
Yeah, let's get that one running.
You know, I remember I had cousins that had ColecoVision, and you know, of course, time and just dust, and I don't know if they eventually just threw it out or whatever. But now it's like, wow, I wish I said, hey, you still want that? you still want that?
You sure
thing?
about that?
You know, gathering dust. I'll take it. I'll take it off your hands. Your hands look heavy. You know, so but yeah. What's your favorite?
Arcade game? Like, we talking retro or like
Retro,
all
yeah.
told?
Retro.
How, like, this era retro? When
I know,
was,
right? You almost gotta do.
there's like
It's not easy.
spectrums and eras. I used to have an arcade near my house when I was little, before I hit double digits. This place called Hackers, Hitters, and Hoops in Chelsea that
Okay.
I loved. And I really like the shooter games. I really like to play, do you ever play Revolution X?
No.
That was a weird game. It was the band Aerosmith,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, had a video game made about Aerosmith.
Oh wow.
And it's real silly.
Now,
It's-
did they do that before? No, they had to do that after Michael Jackson, right? After
Yeah.
Moonwalker, because I think Michael Jackson was the first.
That's the one, actually. Yeah. And thinking all told, having Moonwalker.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that game's so good. But yeah,
It was a great game.
yeah, it was just a solid game.
You know, it was a solid game. As much as people, it's like, oh, Michael Jackson's got a game, but it was a great game.
It was a great game, and then it got extra brownie points because it was so strange. Like, there would be the monkey would pop out at some time. Sometimes you become a robot.
Right,
You were
right.
like saving people. You had
Right.
lasers. It was that kind of. It also kind of reminds me of like Blues Brothers, which was like all over the place.
Correct.
Yeah, Aerosmith had basically the same dealio, except they like got even more aggressive with it. So they were in the game. There were like audio clips from them. Their music was in the game as MIDI files
Wait, they were in the game as well.
as themselves.
Wow,
the
that's
whole
great.
it was like it's the extreme 90s and the resistance has taken over the world and you have to start this revolution and you have to save all the members of Aerosmith because music's illegal and you have to like find CDs and the CDs are like shooting out of your gun and it's so wild.
Wow.
It's really good. That's up there for me.
That's pretty cool. Did you ever get into the Double Dragon?
Oh, That's a classic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely enjoy some side-scrolling beat-em-ups. I'd say if I had to choose of that genre, I would go for like the big X-Men arcade cabinet. You ever play that one?
Yes. Yeah, that was amazing.
And it was especially good because it's 6-player.
A 6-player, and that's that bridge between people that actually read comic books. It was into X-Men. Like, way before the films, children. You know, where it's like you were a fan of X-Men and video games and played that. Of course, Street Fighter.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but Double Dragon was pretty cool.
Yeah, and pretty ahead of its time, too. That game still really stands the test, I'd say.
Yeah. And they had to make a movie about it. That's how well it did. Now, there was a game I didn't even know existed. There was a arcade, I think it's like 14th Street. Is there one over there?
Arcade on 14th Street.
Is there somewhere? St. Mark's? No, by St. Mark's?
Barcade?
Yeah. Somewhere.
Yeah. Like, in modern times, the arcade's still there.
Yes.
Yeah, Barcade.
Barcade. And they have a game called Ladybug. And I didn't know that it's like if Pac-Man and Centipede had a baby. That's the game.
I'm down with that.
It was pretty interesting. And it's not easy. With a name like Ladybug, you figure it would be...
You would think.
It was serious.
Did you ever play, they have like Battle Pac-Man? It's a more modern game.
No. What is that?
Awesome. It's like a pretty good boardwalk hit right now if you went to like the Jersey store or something. It's 4-player Pac-Man, and you're playing Pac-Man, but you're also kind of playing against the other people too. So when you get Pac-Man, you go around the screen and then eventually a power pellet pops up and you can eat the ghosts. But at that point, when you get that power to be able to eat the ghosts, you can also eat your opponents.
Wait a minute. I did play a version of that.
Yes.
I did play. I didn't know that was, because like a 4-player game, correct?
Yeah, it's fun.
Yes. Yep.
It's a great coin sucker, though, because everyone has to pay to play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I guess you could consider that a cabinet as well, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think they have that at Barcade, actually.
Yeah. I played it there.
And the, that's another, I can't remember if this is, if it was, which system was connected to it, but there's like a bar drinking, like you're like a...
Tapper.
Tapper. Now, was Tapper Atari? Or was it ColecoVision?
I think so. It was one or the other. I was big on Intellivision.
It wasn't quite Sega, no.
No. Have you ever played it in an arcade?
But that game in a arcade?
Yeah, Tapper in it.
Yes, it's amazing.
And it has like the handle.
Yeah. Yep.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That
game is difficult.
Super hard. Yeah. Like
it is no joke.
Yeah, no joke. Cold intro, no chill.
Right.
The first action, oh, you lost.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute. Yeah. There's no warm up. There's no code to cheat.
No.
You know, cheating codes. When did that come into play? With was that Sega or Nintendo?
I mean, the Konami code is like the quintessential like old school code. I'm sure there were others too. I think there's a funny history around cheat codes and just Easter eggs in general. I'd also have to check my facts on this, but from what I've read, I believe the situation was back in the day, like if you, like it took a lot of people to make a video game, still does, but back in the day you didn't have like a credit screen where it was like, and this and this person helped out. So real sharp developers, not really a cheat code, but they would hide stuff, they'd hide like secrets in the game where they would put their names.
Oh.
But like straight up cheat codes, I don't know if there's any cheat codes on any Atari games. It's more like just secret tricks, like this is a place where you can stand on the Donkey Kong map and you won't get hit by anything. That probably didn't come out till the Konami era of games, I think. Again, yeah, please feel free to roast me post session if I'm quoting any of these facts wrong. I'm going on best memory and what I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, leave comments. Roast him. Roast him good.
I think that's kind of what I like about the hobby. There's like genuine lore in this stuff. It's not common knowledge. It's not something that's on the tip of everyone's tongue. And it's kind of exciting when you learn weird stuff about old games. Mm-hmm. Like, I think in that it's kind of, you have this like situation where like you Google something and you learn any fact right off the cuff. And sometimes it's fun to not Google and see what you remember and whatnot. And sometimes even then it's kind of hard to Google things about this that are obscure. It's kind of fun getting a little bit of background knowledge in this stuff. It makes you, there's a little bit of like a badge of pride, I'd say, with retro. It's fun to see where this stuff comes from, and you kind of have to do a little bit of detective work to figure something out. But I would say most all of it's out there, if you do have any questions. Or feel free to hit me up and I'll try my best to make up a thing or two.
Just make it up as you go along.
It's totally ad-lib. This is completely flying by the seat of my pants here. Wait, so why do you have this one ColecoVision cartridge, but you don't have a ColecoVision? I've never tinkered with, I've played like collections of ColecoVision games like on disc,
right.
But I've never actually played on a genuine ColecoVision.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you steal this from your relative?
No, not at all. No. That's funny. No, I didn't. You know what? I don't remember. I think if our memory serves me, someone was throwing out a whole bunch of stuff. It was like a garage sale, and they just had one cartridge. And I was like, you know what? I plan on getting the game one day, so let me pick that up. So there you go.
That's your investment. We'll have to do a fall episode where you get your ColecoVision.
You know, gotta get that.
You gotta get that.
Now, are you a Sony PlayStation guy?
My taste in games are weird and all over the place. Okay. I haven't bought a legit console in a long time. I feel like I'm really falling behind in the console wars. I play a lot of stuff on Steam these days, and a lot of like fan games and homebrewed games and games that are just not released by specific studios. I don't really have a particular allegiance to Microsoft or Sony. You?
Okay. No. But I was just wondering, you know, just I mean, are you a Sony guy in general for other things, or?
No. Back in the day when I was still console current, which was probably like the PS2, GameCube, Xbox One era, where I still had the full spectrum. Like, I definitely had more PlayStation and Nintendo games than Xbox games. They usually didn't have the genres of games I wanted on Xbox, but there were definitely some really cool ones. Did you see, finally, after, oh my god, I can't even think how long it's been, Shenmue 3 came out?
Mm-mm.
Do you ever play Shenmue?
No.
That's a wild one. That's actually, what am I saying? That's Dreamcast.
Oh, wow.
I'm totally losing myself. Yeah, it's been a while since I played on. That's why it's fun to actually get some hard stuff in my hands. Yeah. That was a great one. Do you ever have Dreamcast? Do you ever get into that at all?
No, not at all.
That was an interesting one because that's actually kind of in a sweet spot for making reproduction games because you can basically just burn the games onto blank DVDs.
Oh, wow.
Which, at this point, you're really not hurting anyone. There's no one, except for resellers selling genuine Dreamcast, and some of them have gotten so expensive that definitely don't make them for resale, but if you just want to try them, there's a lot of fun stuff out there to try. But Shenmue was arguably one of the big hits on Dreamcast, and it was just this massive open world game where we're exploring like a comical amount of buildings and trying to make ends meet and like trying to solve this mystery around your family. And it came out on Dreamcast, Shenmue, and then Shenmue 2, and the story left off open-ended. And
you
just
know what?
like, yeah?
Let's do this.
No,
as you're working. This will be the end of an episode. We'll do part 1 and part 2.
Sure.
So just give everyone your social media.
Sure. You can find me on Retro Kingdom NYC, on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook under the same name, under Retro Kingdom NYC. Feel free to check me out. I'm part of Tozai Exports, so if you Google Tozai, Tozai Exports, that's the web front, and then we have an in-person store. We have a brick and mortar downtown in Chelsea. If you want to visit Retro Kingdom, see our actual storefront, maybe even hang out with me, we're down on 247 West 16th Street between 7th and 8th. Yeah, happy to help you if you have any questions, if you need any repairs, if there's any way I could help you learn a little bit more about classic games. I'm happy to try to make up some tall tales, and hopefully they're half true.
Cool. All right, you're watching GeekCaster. I'm Michael7Michael. Go to Michael7Michael on Instagram, and you can always go to GeekCaster on Instagram. Please do that. Support.